Welcome to the Fergus Falls Business Spotlight Podcast, the show that takes a deep dive into local businesses and the individuals that run our community. To guide you along the way, here's your host, Jacob Bittner.
Oh, we're talking about Scouts. What is it? Scouts BSA? Is that what we're calling it nowadays?
It's technically our name is still Boy Scouts of America. We are going through a rebranding that'll take effect in February, and then we'll be known as Scouting America.
Scouting America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and that obviously we're going to talk about the history of Scouts, how you guys came to be, your current operations. Maybe get into a little controversy if you guys allow me to do it. I'm going to be nice to you guys, but the people really are going to be interested in that topic. So we'll touch on that at the end with the scandal and everything. But I brought Brenda in today. Thank you very much for joining me. You are your title again?
Senior District Executive.
Here in Fergus Falls or Otter Tail County?
I serve 9 counties, and the name of our district is Prairie Fire District.
Okay. So what are the counties you serve then?
It's a test. Let's see if I can get all 9. So Otter Tail, Richland, Wilkin, Grant, Traverse, Stevens, Swift, Douglas.
Did you get Pope?
Pope.
There we go.
Okay, so and you are technically then like Travis reports to you, or
Oh, I wouldn't put it that way.
No?
We work together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
I would consider Brenda a resource. So for myself, being a Cub Master in Alexandria, and for all the other Cub Masters and Scout Masters that fall into one of those 9 counties that Brenda looks over, she is a resource for us.
Gotcha. So this is my brother-in-law, Travis Lang, the other guest on the show today, coming from Alexandria. I really appreciate you taking the drive over to do this. I invited Travis because Travis is an Eagle Scout, and I can't speak highly enough about how blessed our family is to have Travis come into it, and the character that's present in somebody that has been through the program all the way through it. And I think that just develops a different type of character in somebody. You can really tell. So thank you, Travis, for everything you do for our family. You're appreciated. And I really brought you here because you're an awesome testament to the system and going through it. And now if I need anyone to tie a knot or help me change a tire or anything else, Travis is there for me. So,
Oh man, thanks, Jake. I'm glad to be here. Glad to just add whatever I can add.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
This.
So we're going to get into some good conversation. Before we do, I do have to touch on some sponsors. So Scouts Honor, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that because I'm not a scout, but Scouts Honor, you guys aren't allowed to drink. Certainly not, can't drink in uniform. That's separate from scouting. You don't drink anyways. Travis, I think I've had some beers with you before, but you're not really drinking these days either. So
you just have times where you just kind of trend away from it.
Well, I've got the beer of the week, and I'm trending towards this Star Island IPA right now. So I'm gonna give this a crack. This Star Island IPA, it's described here, classic American IPA combining Chinook, Citra, and Simcoe hops with subtle maltiness, providing a crisp, balanced mouthfeel. 7.2% ABV and 72 IBU. This is just a really nice, easy drinking classic American IPA, and it's okay that you guys are missing out, but more for me. So on top of that, I also just need to thank Atlas Outdoor Services, Stumbinos, Victor Lundeen's, and my newest sponsor, Fergus Home and Hardware.
Fergus Home and Hardware.
We love those guys, Fergus Home and Hardware. But let's get into your guys' backgrounds before we talk too much scouting here. I'll start with Brenda. Tell me about your childhood growing up and sort of a little bit about what in your background led you to this position.
Okay, so I'm originally from Yankton, South Dakota, if you know where that is. It's on the Nebraska border. My family moved to Ortonville when I was 8. And I graduated from high school there. I met my husband there. Well, he wasn't my husband when I met him, but anyway, he became my husband. He was a year ahead of me, and we ended up getting married and moved up here to the Alexandria area, or down there to the I guess I forget we're not in Alexandria. Anyway, where we had a couple of kids. And then in 2003, I was looking for something for my kids to do, for our family to do, that would bring us closer together.
Did you go to college? Did you go to college for something?
I did go to college.
So
yes.
what was your career path? What was that supposed to be, or what was it?
So I originally went to college in Morris, to the university there, and then after 2 years of college, I decided I didn't want to go for what I wanted to go for. I originally was going for elementary education, and I decided I didn't want to work with children. You see the irony in that, right? Anyway, so they had me go through the career assessment at the university, and it came back saying that I should either be a caterer or manage a restaurant. And I was like, what? Yes, I had worked in restaurants, but I hadn't ever thought about doing that sort of stuff. So they didn't offer any management type of courses that would lead me that direction at the university. So I ended up transferring to Alec Tech, where I enrolled in the hotel restaurant management course.
Okay.
And then I got 1 year in, and then we got married, and I got pregnant with Zachary. And so he's my oldest son. And then we decided that I wasn't going to finish, that we were going to focus on the family part of it first. And then I ended up going back to college when my kids were in middle school, and ended up getting a bachelor's degree through Southwest State. So, yeah. And
that bachelor's degree was in?
Business.
Okay.
Which totally not related to education.
Well, there is a very much so a business aspect to what you do now.
Yes, there is.
That is very clear. A nonprofit, obviously, that's a different entity than like a for-profit business, but you are as much of a business manager, business leader as anyone else. So very relevant.
And I've always had a passion for working with kids. When I was in high school, I actually taught religion classes at my church at that time, and did a dabbling of other things, and like I was the youth director at our church for a while, and so kids have always been like a common theme through my life, but I really never anticipated working for the Scouts. That was just something that came later. So my kids joined Cub Scouts in 2003 in Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah. Yay, Brandon. So I started out as just a parent, and then the second year in, the den leader for my oldest son's group didn't want to continue and was like, hey, Brenda, what do you think? And I was like, sure, why not? I come to all the meetings, so might as well, take on a bigger role. And then the next year I became the Cub Master and was the Cub Master for 3 years. And then we were going to...
So Cub Master, break down that Cub Master role real quick.
So Cub Master, if you look at the job description, it says you are in charge of the pack meeting, which is when all the kids come together. And
that's all the...
Yeah,
I call them troops, but they're not called troops. They're called packs.
They're called packs.
Do the
troops
Girl
are the
Scouts?
older kids.
The older kids.
You're using the right word. It's just the wrong age.
So
group.
once you get into Boy Scouts, it's troops.
We call it Scouts BSA now.
Scouts. Sorry. Yes, there's a lot happening here that I'm trying to track with, but we're gonna get this.
We could use the whiteboard over here and draw you a diagram.
Right. Yeah. But Scouts. So Travis, are you then? Do you have you lead the meetings for all of the?
Yeah, for
all of Alexandria.
All of the age groups. So in Cub Scouts ranges from kindergarten to 5th graders. And there are different kind of dens broken down in that pack. So each age grade, or each grade is essentially a pack. Or
a den.
Or a den, goodness. Is a den inside of the pack.
See, this is some terminology that matters.
It's good terminology.
That's why when we're talking to new families, we try not to use the jargon and the big words, because we're like, okay, so it's age groups.
Right.
So the kindergartners are together and the first graders are together. If we talk lions, tigers, and bears, they're thinking we're talking Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And they're like, what are you talking about?
So you started out as a Cub Master, or were in that role as a Cub Master. Mm-hmm. And then how long did you do that before they got their hooks in you? Right away.
I was a Cub Master for 3 years, and then my kids crossed over into the troop. my oldest one crossed and at year 2, and then my next one was a year right behind him, and so then he crossed. And we were moving into Alexandria, and so we joined an Alexandria troop because it didn't make sense to get them started in the Brandon troop and then yank them away to take them to another town. As Brandon, Evansville, I mean, they're close to Alec, but, you know, not close enough to drive back all the time. So we put them in Troop 412 in Alexandria, and both of them became Eagle Scouts out of that troop.
Wow. Okay.
So,
And that's when you became a troop master or what?
I was an assistant scoutmaster when I first started the troop, and then I became the troop committee chair. So the troop committee chair is the one who runs the committee meetings, which are basically the parent meetings where you do the planning for the unit, like we work on calendar and budget and those sort of things, and help to make the kids successful. Because in the pack, the adults run everything, and the kids are just participants. In the troop, the kids are in charge, and the parents are there just to make sure that they're safe and they have transportation.
Interesting. And then
which is a huge switch for some families. They're like, whoa, I'm used to running everything. No, now you're in the back seat. The kids are in charge.
Interesting. So then your current role, when did you step into your current role? Or was there more in between that in your current role?
Of course there was more in
there's
between.
more in between. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I was a volunteer for 17 years and held a lot of different positions. District committee is like we don't have district committee right now, but district committee is a group of people that coordinate district-related events, which is where multiple units come to that. So like a spring camporee or a fall camporee or a merit badge day or those sort of things. Cub Scout Winter Fun Day. The committee was the ones planning those things, and I sat on the committee. And then I was also the Order of the Arrow advisor for 5 years, which Order of the Arrow is the honor society in scouting. So you are nominated and elected into Order of the Arrow. You don't say, hey, I want to be an Order of the Arrow member. You have to be chosen for that. And it's based on the things that you do and their criteria to be eligible in order to do that.
I don't know, guys. Order of the Arrow, all these titles. It's starting to feel like a cult to me here. So you might have to talk me out of that feeling by the end of this conversation.
Everything in scouting is open for anybody to see. There are no secret organizations in scouting. So if you want to come and check out a meeting, you're more than welcome to come and check out a meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in your current position for?
Almost 4.5 years.
Almost 4.5 years. Okay. So what kind of connection then do you have to Fergus day-to-day hands-on with the operation in your role?
I do not have any direct connection to any unit on the day-to-day stuff.
Okay.
So once a month we have a meeting called Roundtable where all the unit leadership can come and find out the things that are going on. We have a Zoom option. It's held in Alec. So that way, if you don't want to drive, you can still participate. But then I help them with fall recruiting. So like right now I am like neck deep in fall recruiting, coordinating schools, talking in schools, printing flyers, making sure the volunteers have all the resources that they need to do that. And then another part of my job is helping the units to market themselves. So I talk to them about how do you use your Facebook account, those sort of things, social media. And then there's fundraising. So we are in the middle of our popcorn sale right now. And so Brenda's the one at the warehouse that sorts all the popcorn and waits for the units to come and get it. And then at my home is where I store the district allotment of popcorn. So
you have a whole garage full of popcorn?
Not this year. Last year I had like 5 pallets of popcorn. This year I only have 32 cases.
Okay.
So if a unit runs out of popcorn when they're selling, like sitting in front of Walmart or whatever, they contact me and then I will get them more popcorn. Whether it's them coming to me to pick it up or me delivering it to them.
Gotcha. So you're very much so a bird's eye, taking care of everybody in the region.
Like Travis said, I'm a resource.
Making sure you're the oil of the operation.
Wow.
There we go. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll get back to you, Brenda. I want to come back to you, and we're going to get into Travis's background and hear about like some time in Scouts and what it was like to go through the program as an Eagle Scout. Before we do, Travis, you follow the podcast. Have you followed the Elks Point saga, the Smashburger saga?
I have not.
You have not. Okay.
I got to admit, I'm not up to the current
That's
lore.
okay. That's okay. So some of the listeners might be interested. I need to put a bow on the Smashburger saga, a cap on it for this season. at the very least, because Elks Point, they do buy one get one smash burgers out there. It was on Wednesday nights for the last month of the season here. It's going to be on Thursday nights. So I had a smash burger girl because they're buy one get one smash burger. So I did go for buy one get one smash burgers with a girl, and it kind of turned into the saga. Needless to say, the smash burger saga is over, but you could still get your buy one get one smash burgers on Thursday night at Elks Point, and they got the fish fry, steak fry Friday night as well. So that's, I think, going through the last week of September or second to last week of September out there at Elks Point. So yeah, definitely get out there. But Travis, where you're from Springfield.
Yeah. So originally from Springfield, which is in southern Minnesota. Grew up there. So for me, I guess my scouting journey is a little different because I started as a tiger cub. So back in 1993.
Just a little tiger cub.
Yeah. No, back in 1993. Yeah. My parents signed me up for Cub Scouts, which was a great thing because at the time I was going to a Catholic school. So in that Catholic school in first grade, I had one other boy in my grade of 12 kids. So it was 2 boys, 10 girls. So I didn't have a lot of options for making friends, at least in my grade. So I think my parents took that into account and just, probably had some knowledge of scouts before that. So they signed me up for that. And similar to Brenda, so my mom was actually the cub master or the assistant cub master in my pack when I was growing up. So from first grade through 5th grade, I was in Cub Scouts, and right alongside there was my mom being the assistant cub master. So I've always appreciated that about Brenda. It's like, oh yeah, like I think you, or at least I relate you very closely to my mom because she was also someone who was next to me in my scouting journey. So I appreciate that. So Cub Scouts, 1st through 5th grade. Then I crossed over into Boy Scouts. I think that was in, like 1998. So I got to do that. And then the best part about Cub Scouts was just meeting these friends. And then the best part, or I should say the best part about Boy Scouts was just the ability to start going to camp and doing all these outdoor things. There were some camps and things that were in Cub Scouts, but once you transitioned into Boy Scouts, you got to go to the week-long camps.
Right.
And that was a real big part. I mean, I remember a lot of things going through Cub Scouts and learning a lot of things, making a lot of friends. But one of the biggest things was that transition and getting to do a week-long camp because it was something you kind of looked up to and really built toward.
I feel like the age demographic for Cub Scouts, like you probably have a lot more Cub Scouts than people that actually make it into Scouts. Mm-hmm. I think the Pinewood Derby is like, that's just like the peak of everybody's existence as a kid, like so many people make it to the Pinewood Derby and then just like probably just fizzle out or never continue with the organization into middle school and high school. But I will say Pinewood Derby, highlight of every child's life right there. Did you win the Pinewood Derby, Travis?
Oh, never.
But
I'll tell you, Pinewood Derby definitely sticks with people. This summer, there's a vintage car show in Alexandria. And they had reached out to us and asked if we would set up the Pinewood Derby track.
I love it.
So we did that. It was a great recruitment tool. It was fun for the scouts in my pack to come and help with. And it was amazing the amount of people that walked by and said, oh, I remember doing the Pinewood Derby when I was a Cub Scout. And these were people that were in their 50s and their 60s. Mm-hmm. So, these people that have probably been 40 years and still remember very clearly and could tell you in great detail what their Pinewood Derby car looked like. Mm. And how they did, where they placed, who beat them. So it was really interesting to hear all those stories. And it's like, wow, like that must be something that really is stuck with you if, all these years later you can recall it with such great detail.
How many, have you calculated or thought about how many years left in the Pinewood Derby your boys have to get a championship? Or are you hands off? You're an engineer. So, yeah. I mean, being an engineer, having mastered the scouts to become an Eagle Scout, you must have some insight in how to build a proper Pinewood Derby car. Do you leave it to the kids? I feel like it's competition for them. It's not a competition of you against the other kids' dads, right?
Yeah, well, no, this is actually great. What a great thing to talk about, because this is a question that always comes up when people talk about the Pinewood Derby. Is this like, oh, is it just the dads doing it? Is it, letting the kids do it to themselves? The biggest goal of the Pinewood Derby isn't to let the kids do it by themselves or to let dad do it all by themselves. The whole concept and the whole purpose is for the scout and their parent or their guardian to work together. And whatever varying degree of help, a parent gives or doesn't give, the whole purpose of it is to collaborate for, a parent and a guardian to come together with their scout and do something together. If that's been done, then you could come in last place and you've still won, because that's the whole ideal, is to build or foster that relationship between a scout and their guardian or their parent or, whoever it is that they're going through scouts with.
Well, you let me know when the Pinewood Derby is in Alec, and I'll make sure I show up to cheer on Harvey and Gus. I might even help Gus with his car this year if he wants Uncle's help. We'll see.
Yeah. Hey, all you can do is offer.
That's right. So, talk to me about then the experiences, kind of going through scouting as a teenager and getting all the way through Eagle Scouts. You mentioned you guys went camping a lot, the Boundary Waters. I mean, lots of survival camping, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. And I think it works well to what you were saying with, as kids get older, you kind of see kids drop off more and more in things. So in Cub Scouts, you'll see, fairly big numbers because kids are trying things out. They're seeing if something sticks. And the more and more that you go on in years and up in the age grades, you see that the numbers do thin out. And it's for multiple reasons. A lot of times maybe kids have sports or other activities that they're invested in. When it gets to be teenagers, a lot of kids are going to be working. There's a lot of people who decide to take on jobs, and that becomes their focus, or school becomes their focus. So in scouting, there definitely seems to be a little bit of a decrease as you go up in age. And there's other distractions, especially when you talk about being a teenager. Obviously, Brenda and I have a perception of Boy Scouts and scouting in general, but I would wager that maybe some people on the outside who don't have a perception of scouts might sometimes view it as kind of dorky, maybe a little, maybe a little nerdy. Because to us, I mean, the idea of understanding all these skills is fantastic, but some people might look at that and be like,
Well, anybody who called Travis a nerd in high school, shame on you, because Travis is just a savvy man. He is so savvy. He is so handy. And if I have a problem that needs to be solved mechanically, any type of thought processing, engineering that needs to happen, I'm calling Travis. So how many kids did you graduate high school with?
Oh boy,
in general?
I think Springfield, the graduating class was probably somewhere from 50 to 60.
Were you the only Eagle Scout in your class?
No, I was one of two. So out of my grade, I graduated in 2005. And there was one other guy I graduated with that also got his Eagle Scout. And then there was another scout who was one grade underneath us who also got his Eagle Scout kind of in that same time frame.
I looked it up. 2.4 million, roughly, is the amount of Eagle Scout badges that have been handed out since. It looks like the Eagle Scout was introduced in 1912. So 2.4 million people. That's a lot, but not a lot, really. I mean,
they say that 1 in every 4 that join Cub Scouts become Eagle.
Oh, that's actually higher than I thought. I would have expected like a 1 in 10.
No, it's like 1 in 4.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
And 6,000 girls have become Eagle Scouts since they were able to join our program.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
6,000.
Wow.
That's an awesome number.
Mm-hmm.
That is cool. So
they're making up for lost time.
So then, Travis, you had kids, and that's what got you back into scouting. Did you stay connected to scouting once you graduated high school?
Yeah. So to circle back on that, once I got into scouting, I started moving up in that. And then eventually I ended up working for the Boy Scout camp. So every summer we would go to the Boy Scout camp that was in our district. Growing up in southern Minnesota, I was part of what was called Twin Valley Council. So the scout camp that we went to every year was up in the Brainerd Cross Lake area, and that was called Cuyuna Scout Camp. So I think I spent the first 3 years going to camp just as a scout, and that was a week-long experience. And then when I was 14, I was able to volunteer there as a counselor in training. So that consisted of basically volunteering to be there for 5 weeks, just as an unpaid staff member. And then from the age 15 up until the age of 19, I spent every summer working there. So I think it's about 6 years that I put in as a camp counselor at Cuyuna. And I think, like you said, like, did I stay with it after high school? That was the big sticking point. I mean, I really connected with scouts, not so much on maybe a troop level, because once I turned 18, you aren't allowed to be in scouts, or you aren't considered a youth anymore. So you transition out of essentially what is youth scouts. So then I just kind of picked up and ran with, being a camp counselor. And along with being in that camp counselor position, it was just a lot of people that I met, people that I'm still friends with to this day, that I met through working at that camp.
So you worked at that camp till you were 19?
Yeah.
And then what brought you to Alec again? Was it school at Alec Tech?
Yeah. So I had, I think I had toured the college. I had toured a few college campuses, but Alexandria was the one that stuck the most with me. So yeah, after I graduated, I came up here and did a 2-year degree for mechanical drafting and design engineering. And that's what brought me to this area, and that's what kept me in the area. So after I completed my degree, actually, I think I had 1 semester left, and I was interning at Douglas, which is where I work now. And once I had finished up that internship, they had offered me a full-time position upon graduation, and haven't looked back since. Yeah. I've been there for almost 18 years now.
And somewhere in between, you met my sister, married my sister, had a couple kids.
Yeah.
And now they're, how old is Harvey? Is he 8, 9? How old is Harvey?
He's currently 9. So yeah,
he's currently 9.
Yeah. Well, and as they would tell you, both my sons, I have a younger son, Gus, and he would tell you that he's 7.5. And then I have my older son, Harvey, and he would be quick to tell you that he is 9.5.
Okay.
The half is very important to them.
Very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're starting 2nd and 4th grade, respectively, this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and to kind of button end that, so I worked at the scout camp up until I think I was about 19. And really what pulled me away from scout camp was college. So the first year of college, I was able to work at the camp over the summer, being it's a seasonal job. But by the time the second semester rolled around, I was already interning and working full-time at Douglas Machine. So having a full-time job, I no longer had the flexibility of my summer, so I wasn't able to work that summer. And then from there, it transitioned out of being really directly connected in scouting, at least on I guess I could say a paid level. I was paid to be a counselor. I wasn't paid a whole lot. I think, I wrote it down. I think I actually ended the last year I worked there as a 19-year-old. I think I made a little over $1,200 for the entire summer, which is 7 weeks of work. But anybody else you worked there, if you asked them, it wasn't about the money. You weren't working at the scout camp because you were looking to make a lot of money over the summer.
And at what age are kids allowed to join, Tiger Cubs? 7?
So you can join when you're a kindergartner. And so whether you're 5 or 6 but you have to be a kindergartner. So if you're 5 and you're still in pre-kindergarten, you can't join. You have to be a kindergartner. So that would be Lions.
Okay.
So yeah, it used to be Tigers was the beginning, but now it's Lions.
Gotcha. And so that's when you got back into it, was when Harvey was old enough, or did Harvey and Gus start together?
Yeah, Harvey actually started the first year by himself. So I think that was in 2021.
Okay.
So in 2021, Harvey, who was a first grader at that time, joined as a Tiger. And it was something where, Casey and I had talked about this a lot she obviously knew a lot about my background in Scouts. And it was this conversation of, are we going to let our kids kind of choose the things they want to do? And pretty early on, we kind of made that decision. So we let our kids, try any sport that they're interested in. Harvey had a stint in hockey for a while. The boys gave wrestling a go for one season. and we kind of always told ourselves, you know what, we're going to be open to whatever they want to try. We're not going to force them into anything as much as we want to. You know, Casey, as you know, I mean, Jake, you had this too. You had a huge childhood in ski racing. And that was something that, you know, we didn't want to push the kids into. That was always something where we said, hey, we want them to have a natural curiosity and them to trend toward it. We don't want to ever force their hand, whether it's in ski racing, whether it's in, you know, scouts or any other thing. So, yeah, when Harvey was in first grade, he had some interest in scouts. He asked about it, you know, naturally. And that was kind of the opening for me to be like, yeah, we can try this, bud. And maybe, and at that time I go, you know, maybe this will go about as good as wrestling did, which we got a season out of. Or maybe this is something that will, you know, be really engaging to him. And it was. So, yeah, he went through that first grade year as a tiger. And then the next year, Gus was old enough to join as a lion. So next year in 2022, Gus joined on as a lion. And now this year, very soon, actually, this month, the boys will be starting. And Gus will be starting as a wolf. And Harvey will be in Weeblos.
Dang, lots to keep track of there, huh?
It is.
Wolves
it's a lot.
and Weeblos and tigers and bears. Oh my! All right, Brenda, you said that you knew the story of the roots of scouting, so let's hear it.
Okay, so we'll start with England because that's really where it all started. So Lord Baden-Powell was a military man, and he had come back from war and really wanted to instill some qualities in boys. So like chivalry and, you know, outdoor skills sort of things. And so he took 22 boys camping to Brownsea Island, which is off the coast of England, for 2 weeks, which is a pretty ambitious thing. That's a lot of kids to take camping for 2 weeks. And so once he did that, then he formed the Boy Scouts, and that was in 1908. And so then later in 1909, William D. Boyce, he was a Chicago publisher, he went to England for a meeting. And he got lost in the London fog. And there was
what does that mean? Like the actual fog of
the actual fog. It was so foggy he got lost. And there was a boy on his way to a scout meeting wearing his uniform and stopped and offered help. And it wasn't that the boy said, okay, you go down here, you take a left, you take a right, you go down the alley, you know, that sort of thing. He actually took him to his meeting location. And Boyce was so impressed with the boy that he offered him a tip. And the boy declined the tip, saying he was doing his good turn and that it would go against his code if he took money. Boyce made a return trip to England to meet with Baden-Powell. And that is how scouting came to the United States.
Interesting. So, yeah, it looks like...
So we were officially founded February 8th, 1910.
Dang.
In 1916, we were granted a charter by Congress as a patriotic organization. Okay. There are 92 organizations that are chartered by Congress as patriotic organizations, and we're one of them.
Wow.
See, I didn't even look at the piece of paper.
That's a lot of knowledge there. A lot more knowledgeable than my assistant. But my assistant did have some good facts here. Yep. It's interesting because I was scouts. You hear scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. People think that scouts are scouts. I actually was today years old when I found out that Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts had no organizational affiliation at all. No. They are completely the Girl Scouts of America. It looks like they came around in 1912, just a few years after the Boy Scouts, but no connection at any point throughout history.
Well, I mean, technically there's a connection. So Lord Baden-Powell's sister Agnes is the founder of the Girl Scouts in England. So, I mean, technically there's a familial connection there at the very beginning, but then they both went their very different ways. So
interesting. You guys, another thing I want to know, again, not on your side of things, but a very pivotal year in scouting. The year was 1917, and the first Girl Scout troop sold cookies as a fundraiser in Oklahoma. So that changed the world, I think. Girl Scout cookies. It's safe to say that they've had an impact far beyond the year of 1912. How did you guys get stuck with popcorn? We've talked about this before, Travis.
We did have a pretty lengthy conversation, which led me down the road of Googling and looking into when Girl Scouts started selling cookies. And it's like, oh, do Girl Scout cookie sales predate Boy Scout popcorn sales? And I think we found out that they do. The Boy Scouts didn't start selling popcorn until around the 70s, I believe.
Wow.
I don't know if you know that offhand.
I don't know that.
My research after we had that conversation kind of led me down that road, that the sale of popcorn for the Boy Scouts came around much, much later.
Yeah. And no offense to you guys, but I got to just speak openly. The popcorn it's not even in the same conversation as a Girl Scout cookie. So I don't know.
We do have s'mores popcorn.
S'mores popcorn. Not in the same conversation as a Girl Scout cookie, you know? But so what, I wonder, did you get any, in your information, did you get any of the history of like the fundraising for Boy Scouts prior to popcorn?
No, and I don't know if there was a lot of fundraising or what that would have looked like further back. That's something that'd been good to ask all those guys talking about the Pinewood Derby back in the day. Ask them what they sold before popcorn.
I would imagine that there was a lot of recycling, so like the glass bottles. I would imagine that they collected those and turned them in, that would have been part of it. I know in World War I and in World War II, the Scouts collected scrap metal and things to help the war effort. And so I would see like collecting glass bottles or those sort of things as part of a fundraising effort for them.
Yeah. It says here 1941. Again, this is on the Girl Scouts side of things. I'm sure Boy Scouts did as well. But 1941, Girl Scouts supporting the war effort during World War II. They were selling defense bonds. Imagine a Girl Scout coming to your door and trying to sell you a defense bond instead of a Girl Scout cookie. But defense bonds and, collecting scrap metal. So very, very interesting. Do they teach you a lot of that then, Travis, growing up? A lot of that, like, life skills outside of, obviously you're taught, like, stewardship and taught, like, how to be a decent human being, not just how to tie knots and sleep in a tent.
Yeah, I think it's really well-rounded, I guess. It's funny thinking back, what you remember from when you're younger is a little biased. You remember the fun things and the exciting things. I remember building birdhouses, but I just remember there being structure around it and there being parents and older scouts that always helped. So it was always this idea of just a community and kind of this idea of working together. And I think the rest of it all just felt like common sense. You've been in Scouts long enough. The idea of, having duty to yourself, duty to your, to your community and all that just kind of falls into place. And yeah, obviously learning to tie knots. And, sometimes talking about tying knots or setting up a tent, it's kind of learning by doing. You do these day camps as a Weeblos or you do the week-long camps as a Scout. And a little bit of it is you're just kind of thrown into the fire. And it's like, hey, you can figure this out. You have all the tools in front of you and you have people around to help you. So we're not going to let you flounder and fail, but we're going to set you up to succeed on your own. And I'm sure it differs from troop to troop or from pack to pack, but it's one of those where the general idea is always just giving people the tools to succeed, giving these kids the tools they need to succeed and helping them.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you guys camp these days? Are you going camping in the same spots that you were camping when you were a kid? Do they have do you guys have like contracts to camp in certain areas?
We own multiple camp properties.
Okay.
So Northern Lights Council is our council here. Camp Wilderness is our primary property, which is north of Park Rapids. So it's 2,400 acres.
Oh,
it's a big property,
Dang.
And it's on Bad Axe Lake. So there's a lot of lake shore there. There's the primary property is named Camp Wilderness, but on that same geographic area, whatever, there is Butler Wilderness Outpost, which is the Cub Scout camp. And so they have separate waterfronts and dining halls and flag fields and all that other stuff. And then there's other properties. So there's Heart Butte Scout Reservation, which is out in western North Dakota. And then there's Big Four, and that's out in western North Dakota. We're in the process of acquiring a couple of other properties. So we own those properties. So other units can go other places. So you could still go to Camp Cuyuna and go camping.
So the business side of the organization, they are very much so into the real estate game. Scouts of America, they're real estate they're into that. Or obviously, if you guys own all these properties, that must have been something you guys acquired over the years.
Yes.
People
have donated land.
Oh,
I was
okay.
going to say,
That
I
makes
was
sense,
saying a lot of it, especially, I guess I can't speak to Camp Wilderness, but from my experience with Camp Cuyuna, which smaller than Parker's, or I should say,
Camp Wilderness.
Camp Wilderness.
Parker's is another camp.
Yeah, but smaller than Camp Wilderness, but still, it's a nice chunk of land, and a lot of it was donated. A lot of it was donated back, I think, in the 50s, at least for Cuyuna, where it was just seen as a parcel of land, and whoever was in it or whoever owned it said, hey, I want this to go to the Boy Scouts. I want this to remain forest. I want this to be used for generations. I think that's probably the case for a lot. I guess I can't speak to all the different use cases for land, but in a lot of cases, it was probably land donated or, sold at a fairly good price in the name of conservation and in the name of kind of continuing on the legacy of Scouts and what that stands for.
So how is the organization funded then from like a local level, the charter here in Fergus Falls, to ALEC, all the way up to regionally, and then connected to Scouts BSA?
Okay, so our national office is granted a charter by Congress. Okay, so Congress gives the national office the permission to grant charters to the local councils. Okay, and then from there, the local council grants a charter to the chartered organizations. So, like here in Fergus Falls, the troop is chartered by Living Faith Church. Okay. And the Cub Scouts are chartered by the Knights of Columbus. So the council grants them a charter to be able to have the unit. And so each of those chartering organizations owns the unit. That is their unit. So when the unit needs something, they go to them and they help them with like a meeting location. So the Cub Scouts here in town meet at OLV. And that is through a partnership with the Knights of Columbus. The troop meets at Living Faith. So like Travis's unit is chartered by the Knights of Columbus and they meet at St. Mary's. Most people refer to them as the St. Mary's Pack, but they're not actually chartered by St. Mary's. They're chartered by the Knights of Columbus.
And chartered means that's like
it's a legally binding thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
You can
There's
think
an
of it kind of
agreement
as
that you have to
sponsored
sign
by-
every year.
Yeah. It's like a legally binding sponsor.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
that's
document that has to
interesting.
be signed every year.
Okay. So ultimately then they're responsible for, along with you obviously, coordinating your local popcorn sales and fundraisers, and then you overseeing you're like the popcorn kingpin of the region here. So you guys all kind of do work together though to make each of those individual charters
Yes.
work.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
But it's not like the funding is actually getting trickled down from a national level to Fergus Falls and Alexandria.
So when a family joins scouting, they pay a membership fee, and most of that fee goes to the national office. Okay. Part of that fee goes to the local council to help offset costs and things like that. So like our council provides registration assistance. This is one example, okay? So if there's a family that wants to join and they can't afford the fees, the council subsidizes the fees. So the family pays a very small portion of those registration fees and the council pays the balance. Part of that comes from what is charged, for lack of a nicer word of saying, to the new families. So there's a $36 council fee. Also, the popcorn sale is part of what funds the council to be able to provide the things that they provide to the units. We also have our council office in Fargo. There's one in Grand Forks and there's one in Minot. So Northern Lights Council is the entire state of North Dakota, just to give you an idea of the size of the council.
Wow.
The entire state of North Dakota, 2 counties in Montana, 2 counties in South Dakota, and 23 counties in Minnesota. Northern Lights Council is massive. Okay. And so there's professional staff like me, and then there's the administrative staff in the Fargo and Bismarck office. So we have a registrar who takes care of registration related things. We have a person who takes care of coordinating the popcorn sale. So I mean, there's administrative staff that helps with all of that. So if Travis has a problem with Scout Book, he's going to call our registrar.
Gotcha.
And she can hopefully help him with whatever the problem is.
Gotcha. What does it cost to be in Scouts?
So right now it is $121 for 12 months. If you decide to elect to receive Scout Life magazine, which is a really cool magazine that comes 10 times a year. My kids would always flip to the back page and read the jokes. I don't know if they actually read an article in the magazine, but they read the jokes. That is another $15. So if without, it's 121, with it's 136. That does vary from council to council because some councils have a council fee that's much higher than ours.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. What else we want to touch on like the operations and like the stuff that you guys do on the day-to-day before we get into like maybe some future speculation. We have to talk about the scandal, the rebranding too. In 2019, they started to allow, the girls really, it looked like it says here in 1969, Boy Scouts of America opened some programs to young women, starting with the exploring program. So that was 1969. They became a little less exclusive, and then 2019 it's fully open for girls to participate in scouting.
So maybe I should explain what exploring is. So exploring is an internship-like program where kids get to have hands-on experiences doing things. There's 12 different areas that you can have an exploring post. So there is an exploring post here in Fergus Falls. It's with the fire department. So girls and boys can join the fire department exploring group and learn things about firefighting and just building connections in the community. There are other areas that you can do. So you can do law, you can do art, you can do science. There's all these different areas. And the whole point of exploring is for the kids to have a taste of that thing without having to go to college and waste all this money, having never experienced it. And so it kind of can help them on their career path, and it gives them a connection in their community. So let's say, like with Travis, if there had been an exploring thing for engineering, which is one of the 12, he could have had a job waiting for him at Douglas when he came back.
Which he already did.
Right, I know. But the whole
true.
point of exploring is to build that connection with the business and the community.
Okay.
There's also venturing, which was fully co-ed shortly after that also. And venturing is an interest-based program. So, for example, there was a venturing crew in Alexandria years back, and all they did was canoes. That was their whole focus. So they got canoes that were in bad shape and they repaired them. They made some from scratch, and then they took them out on the lakes and rivers and used them. Another one is Sea Ship, and that revolves all around water. So there's a Sea Ship group that is chartered through Camp Wilderness. They don't really do a lot of the water stuff, but it's kind of like their little club at Camp Wilderness, and they help out with other things, whether it be day camp, or there was the Merit Badge, the Frozen Anchor event in Fargo. They were the ones that were running that event. So they give back to the council and have that. And then there's, Cub Scouts, which is kindergarten through 5th grade. It's girls and boys. We have family unit here in Fergus Falls. Travis's unit is a boy-only unit. And this is going to be breaking news because this just happened today. Okay. PAC 416 became a family unit.
Oh, that's awesome.
In Alexandria. So that meeting just happened. And
what does that mean, a family unit?
So there are 3 different types of Cub Scout units. So you can have a boy-only unit, which is what it was before girls were allowed to join our program. You can have a girl-only unit, or you can have a family unit where it's boys and girls in the same unit.
Okay.
And then in the troops, there's a girl troop and then there's a boy troop. And so right now, our national office has rolled out a pilot program for combined troops, and that just went live September 1st. So they'll give it a year, see how it goes, and if it goes well, ideally there would be just like Cub Scouts where you could have a boy-only unit, a girl-only unit, or a combined unit.
Gotcha.
So we'll see how the pilot program goes. So
interesting.
It's very exciting because there are a lot of towns where they don't have really enough for a girl troop or a boy troop. And so they are already doing things together, like a merit badge.
Right.
Why wouldn't you do a merit badge together?
Right.
It's just like school.
Yep.
So, for example, I'll use Perham. Perham has a boy troop and a girl troop. Last summer, they went to Camp Wilderness and they shared a campsite. The girls were on one side of the campsite and the boys were on the other side. But it didn't make sense to get a separate campsite for those 4 girls that went to summer camp.
Right.
That way they could share the cost of the site.
And allowing people to, I don't know if, I probably would have been a hell of a cookie salesman if I would have been allowed to join the ranks of the Girl Scouts. But I don't know if it goes that way these days, if boys are joining Girl Scouts or not.
No.
Nope, it is girls only. It is
girls only.
exclusive. Okay, I wonder do you think it'll ever change? Or do you
I
think
don't
they're
know. I don't know.
Pretty hard about that. Interesting. I've had lots of interesting conversations with people both on and off the podcast about, I had interviewed our local sports broadcaster here about sports and girls, or particularly in this, like the particular conversation really is the controversy is biological males competing against biological females in sports, stuff like that. Now, scouting I see as like what took so long, because it's not, to me, those survival skills, the things you guys are teaching and the things you guys are promoting, there's nothing that is gender, there's nothing that is a gender role by any means. It's just survival skills, right? That's something that everybody should be learning, right? I don't know. Have you seen the numbers grow? Or regionally here, obviously, it's still a lot more boys than girls in the organization.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Well, and so our national office did a survey, and they surveyed moms of Cub Scout aged kids that are not currently in the program, that have not been a part of our program. And they found 5 things. Number 1, those moms felt very favorably about scouting. But when asked what we do in scouting, they had no idea. And why they should join scouting, the benefits that they would get, they didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know that girls could join. Okay. And they felt that they were only asked to join one time of year. And it was just join. It wasn't explained why. And so we do our main recruiting in the fall, but you can join any time of year. There are no prerequisites. If you don't join as a kindergartner, it doesn't mean you can't join as a 3rd grader, or that a lot of people think that if you're not a Cub Scout, you can't be in the troop. And that's not the case.
Do you guys operate year round?
Yes.
Okay. So you do meetings like weekly, bi-weekly?
We do less. So Cub Scouts tend to do less in the summer. Troops do a lot of camping in the summer. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, there's definitely opportunities year round. There's summer camps that exist in the Cub Scout space. A lot of our scouts in our troop did attend some of the summer camp this year, and it's awesome. You hear these kids come back, and they just have so many good things to say and so many fun experiences that they get out of these day camps. So, and the winter camps too. So, one of the biggest things, there's a good group of our scouts that went to the winter camp at Camp Wilderness, and just, they'll tell you about it. They'll talk your ear off if you ask them about it. And it's just because there was such an impression on them. It was something that was so outside of what they normally get to do or what they normally have access to. And so, yeah, it's just fantastic. But yeah, I think like Brenda said, so for Cub Scouting, we primarily focus on kind of the 9 months during the school year. And we don't hold regular meetings over the summer, but it's great because we still have just kind of general meetups. We have fishing meetups where we say, hey, on this date, we're going to meet here and do a fishing activity. We're going to make plans to see how many of our scouts we can get to some of the summer camp opportunities. But it's good. It gives a little break in the summer and then kind of lets us focus during the school year at that age group or with that age group.
Gotcha. Well, before we get into the scandal, we're just going to touch on it for a little bit because I want to touch on it. I got to talk about it because it's the largest or one of the largest settlement funds in history, coming out of the restructuring in 2020 of the organization to pay for the allegations that were filed by over 82,000 men. And again, we've just spent 55 minutes highlighting this organization and how awesome it is. And I truly believe that Eagle Scouts, people who have been through the program, they are I don't want to say like well, 11 out of the 12 people that have walked on the moon are Eagle Scouts. You know, a vast majority of presidents have been through made it to the Eagle Scout rank. I mean, it produces some of the highest quality of people. Now, whenever you get into organizations working with kids, adults working with kids, I don't think there's any organizations that are free from skeletons in their closet. And I think that when you look at an organization like Boy Scouts that has existed for over 100 years, I think that there's going to be things that happen and things that come out that aren't necessarily reflective or indicative of the organization, but just more so realities of the need to protect kids when they're with adults. So really the background of this scandal, it like I said, 82,000 kids over multiple decades came forward. Really 2020 was kind of the year it all hit a sort of breaking point for the organization where they decided that they were going to file for bankruptcy, restructure the organization, and establish this fund. So they established this settlement fund of $2.4 billion, which is one of the largest settlements for a sexual abuse claim in U.S. history. And obviously a big part of that also was coming forward and restructuring and changing how you go about. I know that there's more training and more scrutiny around who you allow to be leaders now. I know that they did a lot of that internal stuff before, but I guess talk about a little bit about what Scouts has done on the tail end of those allegations to help ensure that this is a safe organization. We are vetting these leaders. We are making sure that your kids are in safe hands.
Okay. So youth protection training is required of anybody who holds a leadership role in scouting. If you are registered in the program, you have to take youth protection training. It does expire every 2 years, and you have to renew it before it expires. If you do not renew it before it expires, you are suspended. You're put into this suspended state, and you cannot act as a leader in scouting. So let's say that I am part of a unit and my youth protection training expires and we're going on a camp out and I am the second registered adult on that camp out. Now the unit can't go because I am suspended. I cannot act as a leader in that unit anymore until I renew my youth protection training.
Do you know what goes into that youth protection training?
It is a 72-minute roaring, exciting it's 72-minute training. There are 3 modules as part of that, and then you have to take a test at the end.
Okay.
And if you do not pass the test, guess what? You can't just retake the test. You have to do the first part again, because if you don't do it within a certain amount of time, it like times out, and then it shows that you haven't done the first 3 parts. So you can't just like take the test. The system is too smart for that. But our national office is actually changing that to an annual process. It'll be happening later this year. So it's not effective yet. The online modules will be updated in October. So that's coming soon.
And then background checks?
There are background checks on everybody that is registered. And you cannot serve in a leadership position until your background check comes back. And it has to come back okay.
Gotcha. So one of the things that I think in my brief research I did is one of the things that it seems like the Boy Scouts, they did a good job on, but it was also a bad job in the sense that they kept all this documentation of what had happened. So this leader, whatever, who was committed a violation in one state can't go to another state and serve Boy Scouts. So they had like an internal log of a lot of these violations, a very extensive internal log, but in a majority or most of those cases were never turned over to authorities. And so I think to me that highlights a bigger issue, not just with Scouts, but in general. It's like an organization has a duty to not just make sure that that person isn't harming kids or abusing kids within their organization, but also to make sure that person's not allowed to be a part of any organization that works with kids. And so I think more stuff needs to be happening. I know that there are organizations locally here that have skeletons in their closet that aren't brought to light, that conversations need to be had and people need to be held accountable, not just removed from their current position, but they really need to be outed in a sense that they that is there needs to be a log or some type of a way to keep people accountable outside of the organization that the violation occurred in. And so, again, I don't want to get too much into that. I don't want to. You guys are local representatives. This is not like you guys didn't have anything to do with this bankruptcy settlement, but it's an organizational thing, you know?
Yeah. And I guess speaking of that, I mean, there's not much that I could imagine Brenda and I could really speak to about that on a national level. But I guess personally what I can speak to is, you know, for the 6 years that I was a camp counselor, and granted this is back in the early 2000s, you know, from day one as staff, we took the topic of sexual abuse, of physical abuse, and any kind of abuse happening inside of Scouts or outside of Scouts very seriously. You know, a big part of our training, there's a week before camp would start that we would have various amounts of training, just general duties of what it was to run as a camp staff. But a very big part of that was youth protection training. Even back in the 2000s, we were very serious about understanding what the signs of physical and sexual abuse looked like, and knowing that if we recognized that we were very quick as counselors and as staff to, you know, point that out and make sure that it was addressed. And, you know, luckily we were in a place where there was never anything egregious in those 6 years at that camp that we ever came across, thankfully. I mean, obviously it existed outside of the little slice of scouting that I was, you know, a part of. But it was something where it was always on our mind, and it was just something you'd look out for.
And obviously, you guys don't tell parents that they're not, like, you encourage parents to be involved in the operation of scouting.
Depending on the age of the child, they are required to be present.
Okay.
So kindergartners and first graders have to have a parent with them. Once they get to be second grade, the parent could drop them off. We still encourage them to stay. And then parent or guardian, legal guardian, needs to be present when they're camping overnight, when they're a Cub Scout.
Okay.
You can't just have, you know,
Yep.
10 kids dropped off with 2 people when
Right.
they're Cub Scouts. That doesn't work that way.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is we do have reporting ability, and you can report anonymously. I can't say that word. If you suspect that something is happening. And those reports are all taken seriously. So people can tell me, and then I can go online and file the report, or people can file the report themselves, and those get escalated to our Scout executive and to the national level, and all of those are investigated. But you can do it anonymously if you're not comfortable putting your name out there. So,
Well, I hope that, you know, the backlash, I hope the backlash isn't so bad that people don't want to be a part of this organization, because like I said, we spent, you know, an hour talking about how awesome this organization is, all the different stuff it does, the different ways you guys are involved, the character that it builds in a person when they make it through that whole program. So I really do hope that that's not like a scar in your guys' organization that turns people off from being a part of it, because it's a really, really good organization. It's really, really cool what you guys do for our community and our kids. So before we get out of here, we're done here. I'm not going to drill
can I
you.
mention one more thing?
Absolutely.
So if you're looking to have your child join scouting, or if you're looking for a way to volunteer, we have a website. It is called beascout.org. And so that works anywhere in the United States. You just go in and you enter your zip code, and then you click on the area of the program you're looking to be a part of. So like the default is Cub Scouts, and you put your zip code in there, and then it'll give you all of the units within a 10-mile radius of your zip code and their contact information. So you can find out more information about local scouting in your area.
Gotcha. I will put a link to that in the episode description for the people if they want to join Scouts. I don't get a lot of kids listening to this show, but lots of parents. Lots of parents.
Well, usually it's the parents that are signing their kids up. So
The kids don't have the money to sign up.
How about biggest surprise that you have seen in your years involved in scouting? What surprised you the most?
could have given us notice on this.
I could have.
Well, I guess
It
I
wouldn't
can,
have been a surprise then.
yeah, I can go first if you want to
Yeah,
take
I
a
need
second.
a second.
So, and I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's definitely something that I try to drive home. And this is, through my years of working at a scout camp and even now getting to be a Cub Master. The biggest thing, we talk about there's all these skills and these, life lessons you learn. But I make sure to tell this to the parents that sometimes really the biggest takeaway from scouts is just the community. I'd say look at the friends that your child has made this year. Look at the bonds that they've built with kids that they might not have had a chance to interact with otherwise. And it ties back to me as a Cub Scout. Like I said, I was one of 2 boys in a class, so I didn't have a lot of opportunities to make friends and build these personal connections. And Cub Scouts allowed me that. And the people that I met as a Tiger in Cub Scouts are people that I'm still friends with and close with to this day. There's people that I met in my time as a counselor that I still get to be friends with to this day. One of the other parents in our scout pack or in our pack was someone that I was in scouts with when I was younger, which just a very random occurrence that we happened to end up in the same town with kids the same age and are now able to pick back up and continue to be in scouts. But just the biggest surprise is the connections and the community that can be fostered and built out of it, and these kind of relations and these things that can last a lifetime. That's the biggest surprise that I think a lot of people don't realize when they step into scouting, because they see it as just the merit badges or the ranks, but it's really about the community, and it's about, the friends that you can make through it.
I like that. Brenda?
That was actually what I was going to say. So I have an example. So our council turned 50 this year. So we went through a merger of 4 councils in 1974. And so we decided to throw a big birthday party at Medora. And that was just a couple weekends ago. And I remember when I was a Cub Master, it was boy only at that time, of course, looking around the room, and there's all these sisters sitting in the room. And they participated in the activities and they did all the stuff. And then the brothers would get up there and they would get their medals or their belt loops or their patches. And the sister sitting there like, I did that too. And I'm sitting here. And we had our opening activity that first night that we were there. And there were all these girls running around and all of these moms and all of these dads and all of these brothers. And I was like, and this is what I wanted back then. And now it's a reality in scouting. Girls and boys and brothers and sisters can do this with their parents. And it is such an amazing program. And like Travis said, I mean, I would say probably 50% of the people that I consider friends I met in scouting. And my kids met people in scouting. And we go places and we run into people. And it's like, holy cow, I haven't seen you in 10 years. What's going on? It's just a really cool thing.
It's the kind of bond you only get when you join a cult. You know what I'm saying? Just kidding, guys. How about best business advice, Brenda?
Best business advice.
I could have prepared you guys,
I'm
but
like,
what fun would that be?
What am I even supposed to say to that? I'm not sure what your
Okay.
best business.
Travis, best business advice.
So, in terms of scouting as a business or just as an organization, the biggest thing I've learned in stepping into the role of a Cub Master, which has been amazing, but also very challenging. But the biggest thing I've found is just to rely on those around you, that this isn't a game of try to do everything by yourself. The key to victory, the key to success in this is to involve others, is to give other people the chance to, prove themselves. Say, hey, I want you to be able to do this, whether it's popcorn fundraising, whether it's helping with an event. You put them in charge and say, hey, I want you to take the lead on this. You give them the opportunity to succeed, whether it's a scout doing this or whether it's a parent being given that chance. The more you can rely and branch out and work with others, the easier it's going to be for you. And I think that's true in any kind of business. You can't just do it all yourself, no matter how much you think you can. The best business or the best advice you can give anybody is just to rely on others.
Nice. That spark anything with you, Brenda?
Well, I was thinking about teams. So a lot of, units are, so Alexandria is kind of an exception in a bunch of in the towns that I serve because there are multiple units in that town. So there's 3 Cub Scout groups and there's 3 troops. And that doesn't happen in any of the other towns. Here in Fergus Falls, there's 1 Cub Scout group and 1 troop. But for them to realize that they're not an island, that they have other units around them that they can reach out to, which is one of those things that I say is come to Roundtable. You will meet other people, and maybe they have already invented the wheel and you don't need to reinvent it. You can use what they're currently doing to make your program better, that you're not alone. So,
well, thank you guys for taking the time for this extended interview. It went a little longer today than they normally go, but we touched on a lot of good stuff. I think that the listeners, if they made it through this whole episode, they know a lot more about Scouts than they did before. So in that sense, we've succeeded. But no, really, thank you, Travis, for making the trip over. Brenda, thank you very much for doing what you do. I ran into you at the
Shop Move
and Groove this summer and got your card, and now it's finally happened. You guys are finally in. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the sponsors. Stumbino's Coffee. Waking up with Stumbino's Coffee is the best. Victor Lundine's, Fergus Home and Hardware, Outstate Brewing, and Atlas Outdoor Services. So thank you guys again. Thank you to the listeners. Next week, we've got a good one. I'm blanking on who it is, but I promise it's going to be good.